Hello everyone, good morning and good afternoon. My name is Neeraj Periwal. I'm the Product Marketing Manager here at eFolder and your host for today's event. Welcome to the eFolder Partner Chat Series. This webinar series brings together leading eFolder partners for business-oriented discussions. Today's topic is making the case for BDR, communicating the value of business continuity to clients. Today we're joined by Willie Kerns, owner of SmartPath Technologies. Now, before going into today's agenda, let me cover a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. The recorded version of the webinar will be made available on eFolder's YouTube channel, and we're also going to make copies of the slides available to everybody who registered for the event. Now, with over 130 people registered for today's session, we've put all participants in listen-only mode. You may enjoy the audio portion of today's event either by streaming it over your computer or by dialing in over your phone. Now, we encourage questions strongly throughout the webinar today. We planned a special Q&A section at the end of today's session, but you may submit your questions as we go along, and we'll try to get to them on the fly. Now, today's webinar follows a logical flow. After introducing our partner guest, Willie Kerns, and learning more about his company, we're going to discuss the challenges that partners and clients face when it comes to backup and disaster recovery. We're again going to introduce one of our premier BDR solutions, eFolder BDR for Replicate, and learn how Willie has deployed BDR for Replicate to really bring the benefits of business continuity down to the SMB level, and how he's communicating the value of BDR to clients. And then finally, we're going to go into Q&A. So why don't I go ahead and introduce Willie. Willie is the owner-entrepreneur of one of the fastest-growing IT firms in Western Kentucky, or in Kentucky in general. Willie launched his managed IT services firm, which has grown at over 75% a year since it began, and it specializes in providing white glove technology services to businesses in and around Western Kentucky. Willie is interested in thoroughbred racehorses in his free time, but he considers that his most important job to be the best blogger possible. Willie, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome.
Hey, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here and glad to be on with all of you all and all of the eFolder partners.
Awesome. So, Willie, why don't you go ahead and tell us all about SmartPath Technologies and what makes you special and unique as an MSP. Willie? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Willie, you there?
Yes, I'm
I
sorry.
Can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think we had gotten muted in the GoToWebinar. But no, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, so I own an IT company in Western Kentucky. We're in far west Kentucky, about an hour and a half north of Nashville, and seconds or about 30 minutes from the southernmost tip of Illinois. So kind of wedged just down in very far western Kentucky. We focus primarily on managed services. We only deal with commercial clients, and we deal with a lot of professional services, being the legal industry, the medical industry, and we also do a fair amount of work in the industrial and construction industry, as we have a fairly close industrial complex to us. We started requiring BDRs, as the slide kind of says, for all of our clients back a couple of years ago, just because we had lived through server crashes and downtime and that kind of stuff, and just couldn't do it. The BDR was by far the best way to go. I would say the majority of our practices, probably 70% of them, are some kind of professional services, with the remaining percentage being divided among construction and industrial, probably. But a fairly good, well-rounded client base. There's 16 of us altogether at SmartPath. We're actually a couple of people short from our normal staffing level, but we stay busy. Altogether we manage about 300 endpoints per technician, And so they stay hopping all the time. Sometimes I tell people our ticket numbers and they can't really believe it. But we stay very busy, and we're very fortunate to grow as we have and to be in the position that we are.
Great. So what other, I mean, obviously today we're talking about BDR, but what other solutions do you provide to your clients?
We really do act as a complete all-you-can-eat outsourced IT firm. So we do help desk. We do all the typical RMM stuff, the patching and that kind of thing. And then we really act as a consultant. One of the big things that we try to do is go into clients and find out ways that we can use technology to make them better, more profitable, and more productive, essentially. Which kind of is the same topic as this webinar. How do you show the value? I think that you can demand the most amount of income, the most amount of revenue by showing the most amount of value. I think a lot of times we get hung up on the tech end of it and the nerd end of it, and I'm a nerd at heart like most people. But what gets businesses to pay you the big bucks, as they say, is to be really a solution provider that ultimately can increase their productivity and their profitability. And so that's what we try to focus on. How do we keep them running, working all of the time, and then where can we go in and also help them essentially make more money by automating things, by doing whatever may need to happen.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing all about you and SmartPath, and let's go on through the rest of the webinar today. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what are some common challenges that MSPs face, at least in our eyes? So we've nailed down kind of 3 primary partner challenges when it comes to BDR. One is that a lot of MSPs out there still have clients using tape or consumer-grade backup. Kind of hard to believe considering, 2016. But, some clients are just woefully behind the times. Or, to consumer-grade backup, maybe they're using something like Mozy or Carbonite. Maybe they just don't know any better. They don't know what's out there. And so, MSPs obviously have the challenge of educating their clients about, what are the more reliable and robust alternatives, and how do you get your clients to adopt them. Another challenge of MSPs is, when you've got this massive amount of data growth, or especially over the last few years, it used to be one computer for every employee. Now every employee has like multiple computing devices. Everybody has not only a laptop but a phone, maybe a tablet. So you've got this massive data growth, and it's kind of difficult to predict kind of the cash flows in terms of how much are you getting from data storage, from backup, and it's always important to, like an MSP, to have a very consistent cash flow, to know what you're getting what you got last month and what you're going to get this month, and just in order to predict and plan for the future. And finally, partners often find it difficult to choose the best BDR solution for them and for their clients. And often it depends on what kind of technical expertise they have, how much money they have to spend, how much money their clients have to spend. So it's really important to be able to nail down a BDR solution that works for you, whether that's eFolder BDR for Replicate or something else. It's important to figure out the right one that will match your needs and the needs of your client. Now, speaking of clients, there are also a number of concerns that clients have with regard to their backups. So I did mention, a lot of clients are kind of unaware of BDR, and maybe they are using something like Carbonite and Mozy. And the issue there is they may feel that their backup strategy is kind of inadequate, or they're like, hey, we've been using tape for 15, 20 years. We forget to change out the tape every once in a while, and overall it just doesn't seem like a rational backup strategy in 2016. And so that's a big concern that many clients have. Another concern that clients have is unpredictable backup costs due to growing on-premises data. I already talked about this massive amount of data growth. Um, you know, a trend nowadays is centralized data, so a lot of file servers out there where, massive amounts of data are in one place, and they, typically with consumer-grade backup services, you pay per gig. And that's certainly the case with tape as well. And so they don't have to want to worry about a very variable kind of cost structure when it comes to backing up their data. And finally, and here's where BDR really comes in, there's always a significant risk of extended downtime in the case of a disruption or disaster. Willie is in the heart of Kentucky, western Kentucky, which I'm not from there, but I've heard a lot of tornadoes and other nasty natural disasters can affect that area. Here in California, we've always got earthquakes to worry about. And then, no matter where you are geographically, there's always something like a fire or a flood that could severely disrupt your client's livelihoods. And it's really important, obviously, for them to be able to protect themselves against a long period of downtime. So where does eFolder come in all this? Well, we have a vision, what we call the eFolder vision for the open cloud. And so what we see kind of in kind of order here is we've got rapidly evolving SMB needs. So every SMB is different, obviously. Some may have a good backup strategy, but maybe they're paying too much for it. Some may have no backup strategy. Some may have, they may be subject to huge risks. Maybe they're in Florida and they're worried about hurricanes. Or they just got a ton of data. So you've got rapidly evolving SMB needs. And then you've got a lot of MSPs, like SmartPath Technologies, that make their businesses off of providing managed services to these SMBs. Things like backup and, managed file sync and network security. And so we at eFolder want to enable our partners to go out there and provide whatever BDR service they think is best for them. So what we've done is we've actually partnered with 5 of the leading image-based backup software companies out there. So we partnered with Acronis, Aperture, with Dell, Replicate, Veeam, and of course Shadow Protect, Storage Cloud Shadow Protect. So we partnered with all these different vendors to provide best-in-class BDR services where we combine the power of their image-based backup with the power of the eFolder cloud. And that allows you to provide really cost-effective business continuity solutions. And the cloud, the eFolder cloud, provides storage, compute, and recovery capabilities. It is, all one data center, but we kind of like to separate it out into 3 to really show you the power that you get when you combine this imaging software with the eFolder cloud. And today we're really going to talk about just one of the BDR solutions that we have available, which we actually introduced only last year. So it's relatively new, but we've seen a lot of partner excitement into it. And that's what we call eFolder BDR for Replicate. Now, this is an end-to-end complete backup and disaster recovery solution, which bundles the benefits of Replicate backup software. So, it's got chain-free technology, it's got backup technology, it's got deep connect-wise integration, it's hardware and OS agnostic. So it's got a lot of great capabilities for those partners that really want flexibility in their BDR solutions. And so we take that Replicate software, we combine it with the massive cloud storage and recovery capabilities of the eFolder cloud. So let me, quickly walk you through how it works, diagram. So here we've got I guess I'll use my mouse as a little pointing device here. So we got, your server, and we've got Replimit installed on the server, and it's backing up images of the server to your BDR appliance. And just by the way, the BDR appliances, you have a multitude of options when it comes to sourcing them. So if you want, you can feel free to build your own. And once you have a BDR stuff being backed up to your BDR appliance, you can back it up to the eFolder storage cloud in the Replimit Vault. We've got a really handy global management portal that you can manage all your backups from, and got a lot of reporting and information about those backups. Now, what happens in the event of a disaster? So you want the maximum number of disaster recovery options available to you. So obviously we've got, we allow you to download from Storage Cloud, and we will ship you a disk if for some reason maybe your clients have, huge amounts of data to download and they don't want to hog up their bandwidth, we can ship a disk to you. But in the event of a true disaster, we also allow you to provision a node in our eFolder, what we call our eFolder Continuity Cloud. And that allows you to basically have virtualized copy data and boot up the VM on your BDR appliance. So that way, rather than actually getting the physical data back to the client's office, you're running the VM entirely in the cloud. And that allows for emergency virtualization and recovery in literally a matter of just a few hours, even in the event of, really extended downtime period. So let me just quickly walk through some key features of Replimit before I kind of go into, we allow Willie to kind of share a few of his experiences with it. So all of our BDR solutions, including eFolder BDR for Replimit, are business class. They're really flexible and reliable, and they're channel ready. So we provide, obviously, very powerful image-based backup software, no matter which one you choose. We've got file-level recovery and granular recovery for Exchange. So for all of you with clients that have on-prem Exchange, there's a real benefit for them. Really fast and free pre-seed service. You can back up, obviously, to the cloud, the eFolder cloud. We provide encryption either with partner or user-owned encryption keys. So you hold kind of the keys to the castle. And on-site or cloud-based recovery and virtualization. In terms of flexibility and reliability, we will supply you an eFolder BDR appliance, or if you want to go out there and build your own, you can go ahead and do that. We let you do whatever you're most comfortable with. For those of you who have clients with single server environments, we allow you to do single server deployment. Really great recovery flexibility and multiple recovery options. So I mentioned, download, disk shipment, and emergency in the cloud virtualization and recovery through the Continuity Cloud. And finally, all of our BDR solutions are channel ready. We offer a multi-tenant model, so if you have many clients to manage, which you probably do as an MSP, it's really easy for you to do that. And we offer partner branding and remote monitoring and alerting. Specifically with Replimit, we've got that deep ConnectWise integration. So for those of you who use ConnectWise, you'll really feel at home. Let's see. We've got a question here from Herb, who asks, I hope I'm saying that right, Herb or Herb. Will Replimit be able to restore individual mailboxes? I believe the answer is yes. That's why it's like granular recovery. But what I can do, Herb, is double check on that with our product specialists and get back to you. So I'll shoot you an email privately after the webinar just to confirm that. But let's go ahead now and you know, give the stage up to Willie and kind of Willie, let's have you share a few of your experiences with eFolder BDR for Reprobate.
Yeah, no, that's good. You know, and we've actually got several, and you know, a little bit of history. We have been using BDRs for years, and when I say years, for probably 4 or 5 years, and ultimately had a solution other than Reprobate. But as we continued to add more and more clients, and as those clients amassed more and more data, quickly it didn't become financially feasible for us or the clients to continue down the BDR path that we were on. Hence, we found Reprobate. And one of the big things that really drew us to Reprobate was the no-chain technology in the ease of management. And when I say ease of management, you know, the thing that lets me as Willie, the IT company owner, sleep at night is knowing that my servers, my client servers, are being backed up, and that if we need something, you know, we can have it virtualized in an hour. If we have an earthquake, we're not only prone to tornadoes here, we're right on the New Madrid fault line, like literally 30 miles away from it. You know, we can spin it up in the cloud. One of the biggest things that really pushed to us is how easy monitoring is, meaning that every morning we get an email that shows a screenshot of the last VM of the day that Reprobate took, the last image of the day that Reprobate took, where it is test booted in a sandbox environment, and we get to a login screen. So essentially all that my person who monitors that stuff has to do is go down and verify that each email that we got for every BDR is booted to a login screen, and then we're comfortable that the BDR is working okay, and that should we need it, you know, it'll be there. Now, well, we could configure monitoring through our RMM tool and look at event logs and that kind of stuff, but it's so easy just to get an email every day and the last image of the day showing that, you know, it is booting successfully. It's not a blue screen, et cetera, when it tries to boot. You know, it just dramatically reduces the amount of overhead that we have to spend in developing monitoring and spending time monitoring, et cetera. So that's kind of just a little bit of history about what drove us to Reprobate, and you know, it really did end up being a cost thing as we backed up more clients, and you know, some of those clients grew from 500 gigs of data to 2 terabytes of data over the course of a year or two, which is pretty common nowadays with people and phones and taking pictures of everything, and you know, just data is increasing. So consequently, we were feeling that, and we were feeling that for the cost. But we have had some specific situations. One that's up on your screen right now, we had an electrical contractor who we deal with, and you know, a pretty small electrical contractor. They run a SQL-based accounting package for contractors. It's made by a company called Dexter Cheney. It's the name of the software is called Spectrum, but it's essentially construction management software. So, you know, pretty simple network, a couple of locations, a server in location A, a server in location B. VPN back and forth between them, and you know, pretty simple stuff. Not too difficult, other than running SQL. You know, a pretty normal environment. It was a Dell server. The Dell server had a RAID 5 array with 4 drives in it. It was just a really flaky situation, being that we knew we started having slow performance on the server. All of the utilities and the Dell diagnostics were still saying that the drives were good, although because we're nerds at heart and we know what we're doing, we knew that we had some sort of drive issue or drive failure. And essentially, it just accelerated really quickly. You know, it went from showing the Dell diagnostics showing everything's okay, et cetera, one afternoon to the next morning, the server literally not booting. And so consequently, we had BDR in place, and you know, they were back up and functional within about an hour and a half or so. I mean, when we got there at 7 o'clock the next morning and literally the server wouldn't boot, you know, that's kind of the crunch time for whoever that engineer is, you know, to say, do I take an hour and a half and try to get it to boot, or do I just go to the BDR? And, you know, we have ingrained in our people that you just go to the BDR. And so consequently, that's what they did. We got booted up in about an hour and a half or so, and got people logged back in. And consequently, they worked off of the BDR appliance for about a week or so until we could get new hard drives in for server and then get new server in as well. Ended up being about a week and a half that they worked off their BDR with no problems, and then we were able to re-image the hardware to account for the work that they had done on the BDR. You know, and it really is just that's the kind of thing where the rubber meets the road. You know, I mean, literally, you have a construction firm who has payroll for 150 union electricians, and they got to get it out by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and 7 o'clock that morning you have a server that doesn't boot. You know, thank God for BDR and thank God for Replibit. You know, we've been in those kind of situations in the past. You know, you go back 10 years, 15 years, where even if you could get a server back up, then you had to wait to restore the data, and the data had to restore from a USB drive or from a hard drive or from a tape if it was God-forsaken old. And so, you know, really it did, you know, when even with tape backup and hard drive backup and stuff, you know, when you really stop and look at what's your recovery time, you know, those solutions still have a very high recovery time, and consequently, that's how we sell BDR, you know, to clients beyond our all-you-can-eat clients who we include it for at no cost. You know, we actually sell the BDR solution independently to a number of companies actually. You know, the way that I always have sold it, and kind of the topic of the overall discussion today, the way that I've always sold it, though, is never been about backup. It's never been about, you know, we take images every hour of the server. It's, you know, that's not how I ever lead off the discussion. You know, the discussion is, okay, let's say we have a disaster and the server has died for some kind of hardware reason, or you had a water heater leak and the server room's flooded, et cetera, whatever the case may be. You know, how quickly do you need to be back operational? You know, are you okay if, you know, you have 2 days of downtime? You know, if it takes 48 hours to get everything back operational, is that okay? And no, everybody's going to say no. You know, I don't think we could work 48. Well, could you work 8 hours? No, that would probably be stretching it. And you know, you just keep working down until they finally say, you know, this is the solution that we need. And you know, I phrase it like that. You know, well, let's look. If you have 4 hours of downtime, and you have people, you know, you have 10 employees, and for the ease of math's sake, you pay them $10 an hour plus the 30% burden for overhead and taxes and stuff, $13 an hour that you pay 10 people, so $130 total, and then you have 8 hours of downtime. So what's the downtime cost you just in lost payroll time? And suddenly they see, oh, wow, a $200 or $300 a month BDR really is the solution. You know, and a lot of people who have relied on tapes and relied on hard drives and stuff in the past, they just don't understand that, you know, even if you get the server rebuilt, you've still got the time to restore and the time to recover data. You know, you can have a great backup, perfectly reliable backup from the night before, and it's still going to be a 6 to 8 hour process to get new server in place and get data restored. And you know, people just don't realize that. But when we take the conversation, you know, from a nerd geek technology talk into a business talk about, you know, what is the true cost of downtime? You know, what can you afford? What would your people do during a day that they didn't have their computers? You know, that's when the wheels really start turning in people's head, and they realize that, you know, our solution is the best $250 a month insurance policy that they could possibly buy, or, you know, whatever whatever their price happens to be.
All right. That was a lot of great information. I think a lot of people got a lot out of that. So thank you for sharing, Willie. Let's move on to, you know, I guess our second case study here about an electric distributor. Can you kind of talk about?
This was a great one. This was a great one, and it happened not that long ago, a month or so ago. We have a distributor, so a warehouse that distributes electric supplies, you know, lamps and fluorescent lights and that kind of thing. And we've done some hourly work for them. They mainly use an ERP system that does inventory management, that kind of thing. But I was actually in there. They were talking about the age of their server that runs their ERP system, and a guy took a tape out and said, you know, I hadn't changed this in 2 weeks. I better go and change it, I guess, and changed it while I was there. And, you know, oh my gosh, I just shook my head, and we had to have the typical this isn't working and here's why it's not working discussion, because he hadn't even thought to switch the tape out until I came in to talk to him about the server. Luckily, he hadn't had any problems. They did have a drive failure that we caught a couple of years ago, and caught it simply because of the red light was blinking, and no other problems since then. So they were very fortunate, but they were their backups were non-existent essentially. When we dug in, even the tapes hadn't actually been working in about 3.5 years, and they really had no reliable backup. And I think it was one of those situations. Why didn't they have a BDR solution before? That's kind of a dual fault. It's a fault of ours, even though that they're an hourly client, that we never pushed them that way. And it was to a degree the fault of complacency, in that their server is 7 years old. It's been very, very reliable, and they had no reason to think that when they put a tape in that it wasn't actually working. Until we sat and had the discussion about tapes, and how tapes are, and look at a cassette tape that's 10 years old, and how does it play, and that kind of thing. But essentially, I just immediately, before I left, I said, look, we can make hourly backups of your server. If it dies, the appliance can step in and become your server, and we'll send it off-site, secured and encrypted every night, and it's $300 a month. And they said, yes, let's do it tomorrow. And it was probably the easiest sell that I've ever had. And it's just very fortunate that I caught that in time, before they did have some disaster with a 7-year-old server and backups that they thought they had been making every 2 weeks when they remembered to put the tape in, that actually hadn't been happening for years. So they were very, very fortunate. But they understood, and they said yes. But they said yes right away. And I don't know what the rest of the community out there is doing as far as BDR hardware. And you hit on that a little bit. We've had really good luck. I have a distributor who builds BDRs for me, and essentially we've been using a platform, using a Lenovo Think servers with a pretty simple setup, Xeon processor. But we can get a good, as far as hardware, we can get a good Think server 140 with 32 gigs of RAM and 3 4-terabyte drives for $1,200, $1,300, which you just can't beat hardware-wise. To get a Xeon processor and to get good enterprise drives, for $1,200, $1,300. I've never had anybody throw up the cost of the hardware as being a concern or anything that's ever dragged down the sales performance. And like I said, for our all-you-can-eat clients, we just include it in our monthly cost. But for people like this electrical distributor, for example, who's always just an hourly client, doesn't require a lot of service, doesn't want a contract, they didn't throw up a cost. They didn't throw up a problem at all when I told them, look, the equipment's $1,500. And $300 a month, and we're going to do hourly backups. This thing can actually be the server if you need it to be, and to get shipped off-site. I mean, literally just the easiest sale that I've ever had. The stuff sells itself when you turn it into a business discussion and not a nerd discussion. When you turn it into, okay, let's think, if you can't, your warehouse can't ship any parts, can't deliver any parts, nobody can buy anything for 4 hours. What does that cost? And I actually asked them, and they said about $180,000. And so I said, so I assume 8 hours is double that cost. And they said, yeah, that's about right. Probably $2 million if we couldn't work for a week. I mean, $2 million if you couldn't work for a week, and you haven't done anything to seek out other than put a tape in every 2 weeks. Granted, yes, I as your hourly IT guy, you should have signed a contract with me, and we should have had this in place. But you're relying on this for $2 million a week worth of business, and what are we talking about here? And, it really did turn the cost of the BDR and the monthly service into peanuts. Where for that particular client, I think I would have had a hard time if I approached it from just the technology perspective of, look, tapes are outdated, you need to replace your tapes. We're going to put in this neat system that makes these things called images, and it takes a picture of your server every hour. Now, if I had approached it from the nerd discussion, I don't think I would have got the sale at all. And I immediately got the sale when I approached it from, what's your cost if this thing quits working? So that's probably the biggest thing that I could emphasize to everybody. And to take that even further, I do that in all aspects of what we offer. I try to take everything to a non-nerd discussion. Why do you need a new server? Why do we want to put in, 2 servers with, why do we want a separate domain controller? Why do we want SQL not running on a domain controller? Whatever the case may be, I turn all of those into business discussions. And, when I did that a couple of years ago and got out of the habit of nerd discussions of why you need a second domain controller and you need to run SQL on its own server, when I got out of the nerd discussions and took those to business discussions, and consequently company income and company profitability immediately rose double digits.
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, I think it is really important to elevate your your rhetoric beyond geek speak and more toward a business discussion. And one thing that I think is important to keep in mind is try to approach a discussion in like a multi-phase way. So start out with kind of result, or kind of, I guess I should rephrase it. Start out with something, like what's going to happen, and then what is the benefit going to be, and then what is the final outcome going to be. So we're gonna put in BDR plans. What's the benefit here? Well, you reduce the chance of downtime, basically eliminate the chance of downtime, ruining your business if, God forbid, you have something, some kind of calamity happen that causes you to go out of business for a week. And the outcome really is, peace of mind, greater happiness, and just, you don't have to worry about all this kind of calamity and all this kind of predicament from occurring if you can just prevent it in the first place.
Yeah, that's a great point. And something else, again, it kind of shies away from the BDR discussion, but it encompasses it. One thing that I have found in my business that has made us, I think, more agile, be able to operate leaner and be able to retain clients and keep clients happy, is producing, for anything, even if you want to get them a BDR, producing essentially a very simple, it doesn't have to be 17 pages, but, just a very simple scope of work about, what it is, why they need it, what are the final results going to be, what constitutes completion. And it can be very simple. When you can prove that hourly backups are being made and that a client can restore and be operational from any hourly backup within a period of 4 hours, that constitutes project completion. But if you can get those kind of documents in place, that will really, really help you and really help your clients not have what I call scope creep, or saying, oh, but we have this server over here in the closet and I forget about it. It just runs the telephone system, but I really like it backed up too. Let's do that too, after you've got the BDR in place. It eliminates a lot of those kind of discussions. If you can have some kind of scope of work that just, very basically outlines why you want it, what the intended results are going to be, what defines completion, and that you and them can both sign off and agree on. And then there's no squabbling at the end that, oh, we forgot that voicemail server that nobody touches and hadn't been touched in 6 years, kind of thing that can happen, or scope creep as I call it.
Interesting. Cool. Well, thanks so much for sharing all that, Willie. So I do see a few questions here about how Willie prices his hardware and charging for other things. So we'll definitely address those questions. So stay tuned for all that. But I'm going to get through a few more things before we get to the question. So here, I had a chat with Willie prior to the webinar. He told me they are achieving about 67% gross margins on eFolder BDR for Replicate. Willie, do you want to share a little bit more about this? How do you structure your pricing and how have you been
That's
so
great.
profitable?
And the old things that drew me to eFolder as an MSP was the offering, I guess you could say. In as much as the situation we were in before, we were being charged based on the amount of data that we back up. Whereas with eFolder, when I signed an agreement, we'll say the agreement is for 20 servers to start out with. So I'll buy 20 licensing for 20 servers. Well, with eFolder, I got 2 terabytes of space per server and it didn't matter if one client only had 100 gigs of data and another client had 3 terabytes of data. Ultimately I had 20 terabytes of space to use among those 20 licenses, which dramatically freed up cash flow and freed up the amount of just the amount of cash that I was paying for this one client who had 4 terabytes of data and this other client who had 700 gigs of x-rays and this other client who had 3 terabytes of data. We were just really paying a lot of money when we were paying when we were paying per byte stored or per megabyte stored. So consequently, the eFolder offering of having your space aggregated, okay, you buy 10 licenses and you get 10 terabytes of space, or you buy 20 licenses and you get 20 terabytes, you can divide that however you want among those 20 licenses. Well, that's fine. I don't have more than 20 terabytes total among all of my clients. I might have a few who have a couple of terabytes of data, but still, I have excess space because of the way the eFolder aggregates it, and that really was the offer that drew me to eFolder. Consequently, we are now making, on the low end, 67%, in that's gross margin. So that means after I pay all my bills, pay the cost of the engineer to install it, set it up, document it, et cetera, I end up making usually 75% in the beginning and then no less than 67%. And in some cases, I'm making 200 to 300%. Now, I'll preface that by saying, I'm not being greedy making 200 to 300% because in a lot of those cases, some of those people can't allocate money to budgets necessarily for managed services or for IT, but can allocate money to budgets for things like disaster recovery and backup. So consequently, I may make 300% on the person, but that may encompass a lot of IT work along with it. So, 300% isn't just as rainbow as it sounds, but, anything, a 67%, if I could make 67% on hardware, I'd sell hardware. I'd push more computers out of this little building in Calvert City, Kentucky than you could imagine. There's just I haven't found a product that we can offer really that competes as far as actual money that it brings into my bank account versus money that I spend on offering the service, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, and a really big concern that I think a lot of partners face is, well, what do I do when my clients bring up, Carbonite or Mozy and somebody like that, and instead of paying you, the IT guy, like $150 or $200, I can pay Mozy, I don't know, like $50 or $100 a month would be good. Like, what is your argument against that kind of proposition?
Yeah. And it goes back to the kind of the argument that we have in the very beginning about why they need the appliance in the first place, which is the recovery time. Okay, so I'll agree with you. Rush Limbaugh sells Carbonite, and you think it's great, and it's $49 a month. Okay, let's look. Legitimately, we have a leak in the server room. How long is it going to take us to get the data back operational? And if the answer is anything longer than 2 hours or 2.5 hours, then it goes back to the can you afford to be down for half a day? Can you afford to be down for a day? You can go to Carbonite. Is Carbonite going to ship you a disk? Carbonite's not going. You're not going to get to a live person to get a disc overnighted to you. It's just those kind of things. It really does come down to, if you want to be and this is kind of a bold statement, and I make it a lot. I hope I never have to eat my words, and to this day I haven't. But I just pretty much tell people, look, if you want to be back operational in 3 hours, regardless if a tornado wipes out your building, then this is the solution that you need. Because I have confidence that I can get a server that's being backed up with Replicabit, virtualized in the eFolder continuity cloud. I can get a server turned on in the cloud and get a VPN connection made to that server within 3 hours if a client has a building that's been flattened. that there's no product to compete with that. And I understand it's kind of hard to put something like that into, something that somebody could go pick up off the shelf. But there really is just nothing that competes with it.
Yeah. And have you had to use the Continuity Cloud yet? Hopefully not.
We have used it, but not because we had to. But one of our clients is an industrial facility. They make chemicals that go in paint, and they have to abide by the ISO 5000 process. And as part of the ISO 5000 process, we had to demonstrate in an audit virtualization in the Continuity Cloud. And so what we actually did, the auditor for the ISO 5000 was staying at a hotel here in town. We went to his hotel. I had them virtualize it in the Continuity Cloud. We made a VPN, and he was connected in and browsing the server data about an hour and a half after I made the first call.
Wow.
So I mean, that's and that's it is, yeah, and no offense to any vendor, I'm just not the kind of person who's going to go on trust alone. We wouldn't have made the switch to Replibit, if it hadn't gone through multiple engineers and got signed off on, that it is a viable product and that, it leaves markers in the file system depending on the file system changing. The technical side of it, we tested, we verified it, and we're very comfortable with. But that's when the rubber meets the road, is when you can call and say, okay, I got a situation, let's do this, guys. And, you be back browsing your data in under 2 hours. So luckily, I've never had to eat the words, if you need to be up in 3 hours, then you need to use my solution. And hopefully I never have to, but that's what I tell people.
Great. Cool. Let's see. So, we talked about, we already touched on this, like, how do you overcome client objections? Excuse me. I mean, sometimes it's really as simple as, like Willie said, explaining, can you handle more than 2 hours of downtime? How much is a week of downtime going to cost you? And, why not pay it? Why not pay, a little bit, a nominal fee, to ensure that if that does happen, that if a calamity does occur, that you'll be able to be back up within a couple of hours. So,
and you can also provide a spread. I created a really simple Excel spreadsheet. Anybody can do it, where then you just have to go in and fill how many employees they have, and just payroll costs alone. Don't count lost productivity, not doing work, just payroll costs alone. You can devise a spreadsheet that shows, look, if you have 2 hours of downtime and you pay your people $13 an hour, then this is what it's literally costing you just in payroll costs. So, and that alone will help sell a lot.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, like it's written here on the slide, I mean, you got to emphasize the cost of downtime. Be prepared to quantify the benefits and the cost savings, when they see 150 or 200 or whatever you're charging per month, if they balk at that price, really counter that argument with, look at how much you're saving if you didn't have it. And then quickly, I think they will become convinced. And then finally, this is something that Willie does. He kind of bundles BDR in as a part of a complete managed services offering. And, that kind of allows him to do two things. Kind of obfuscate the price of just a BDR, the BDR offering, and, show that you're getting all of this for one price. And if you were to go out to the Carbonites and the Dropboxes of the world, you could get all this stuff, sure, but the added headaches of managing all of it and, handling like 5 or 6 different vendor relationships, and, it would probably end up being the same cost or maybe a little bit less, but in general, you're getting so much more bang for your buck if you just bundle it all in one. So
definitely agree with that. And and I tell my people too, that having it bundled all in one, our managed service clients, we do treat them like royalty. I mean, we send them cards on their birthdays and they get chocolate, and we treat them like royalty. But having the BDR lets me know that my on-call engineer can be in the middle of the lake fishing on a Saturday, call and get get it virtualized. So my engineer isn't in front of a computer. I'm confident he can call eFolder on a Saturday and say, hey, I need you to virtualize server DCO1 for client Geo, and they're going to do it. Then you're never going to get that level of service with it, with a Dropbox or with a Mozy or with a Carbonite.
Right. Yeah, that's really true. We do pride ourselves on our support team. I mean, we just had a call earlier today, company-wide call, where we talked about all that our support team is doing, and they're really hitting it out of the park. So we're quite proud of the service they offer. So these questions, we've already kind of gone through them. Why it's so important to bundle in BDR. Why you adopted Replicate, you mentioned the chain-free capabilities and
the screenshot verification is just huge. Yeah, getting that screenshot verification every morning in your inbox that and it's timestamped, so that it's the 11 p.m. image that was taken, and literally getting it. And I can tell you, if you will get an image of a blue screen if there is a problem, and that's which is fine. We go in and fix the problem, so the next day we have an image of the login screen. I would much rather get an image of a blue screen, know there's a problem so I can fix it, rather than not know there's a problem and then need it a week later and not be able to virtualize it. So I will tell you, we do get some of those screen verifications that show problems that we either have to get with support, eFolder support on, or my guys have made a foobar mistake and did something wrong. We got to go in and reconfigure something. But having that screenshot verification every morning, I mean, you can't get much better monitoring than that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's definitely true. I know, Willie, you talked about how I don't know if you guys either don't use ConnectWise or you don't use it much, but with Replicate, really great, really deep ConnectWise integration, and rather than having it go to your email, you can have that screenshot verification go through ConnectWise, which is
and we're an Autotask shop, but we do the same thing. I mean, we have Replicate. Replicate actually sends its notifications to an email that automatically generates a ticket for us in Autotask in a certain queue.
Right.
So even if you're an Autotask shop, which we are, and we're heavily invested in Autotask. In fact, we just switched to their endpoint management program for RMM capabilities. But yeah, so both systems, both Autotask and ConnectWise, both the integration that I have seen at least has been, it's been what we need from the service perspective.
Awesome, great. So let's quickly, I'll just run through the pricing before we get to all of your questions. So, as Willie alluded to before, we offer tiered pricing. So depending on your minimum commitment, we'll give you, the monthly price per server, depending on that. And we include 2 terabytes of storage, cloud storage per server. So, and it's important to note that storage is pooled at the partner level. So if you've got, one client with 3 terabytes of data, but then another one with only 1 terabyte, you just, pool it appropriately, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We started with 20 terabytes, which was plenty, and we did have some clients who were more than the 2 terabyte level, but we also had some who were only 200 gigs. So, it all worked. 20 terabytes was more than enough when we pulled the storage, and that's what I got from eFolder that I can tell I could never get from any other vendor was the combined storage. That's huge.
Right. Yep. And then we also offer, if you've got 5 workstations that you want to back up using Replicate, we've got that too, for $15 a desktop. So just real quick, I'll get through this little spiel. So we've got something that we call the eFolder Business Continuity Playbook, which we provide to our partners in order to help them sell and market BDR. So, this is full of different assets. They're all white labeled. So we've written, a ton of white papers, a ton of blogs We produced an ebook. We've made a video about the benefits of business continuity. We've made a brochure. And all of these you can take them and make them your own. So you can take a white paper and like put your own name on it, put the blogs up on your own blog. The ebook and the video you can customize, the brochure you can customize. And so we want you to take these resources and go out there and really, educate your clients about what is so important about business continuity and why should you adopt it. It's really funny. One of the things that Willie mentioned is that, you can go out there and build a calculator for your clients to demonstrate the cost of downtime. We actually have a cost of downtime calculator included as a part of the playbook here. So you literally download it as an Excel spreadsheet and you enter your numbers and you get your cost of downtime. So we're going to be sending out this playbook to everybody as a little bit of a thank you for attending today. But let's go ahead and get to the questions here. So we've got a lot of questions about, Willie, about the cost of your BDR boxes and how much you charge and how you charge. So why don't we go over that a little bit?
Yeah, that's great. And I'll preface this too by saying if you'll make my information available after the webinar, if you want to talk with me directly, then I'll be happy to, reach out to you on the phone or reach out to you via email, let you know what I do. I can tell you that for most environments that we support are typically going to be 3 servers or less, a lot of 1 server environments. We have had great luck with the Think Server series, and there's a model, the TS140, that has a Xeon processor. We max out the RAM at 32 gigs. We buy Hitachi UltraStar 4 terabyte enterprise SATA hard drives, server hard drives, and I can get a box built with 4 terabyte hard drives, 32 gigs of RAM, and that Xeon Think Server 140 for about $1,200 to $1,300. If it's an all-you-can-eat client, it just depends. If it comes down to me having to give them the hardware, I will give them the hardware. I typically require, like for instance, the first month's fees be paid as a setup fee. So if it's going to be a $1,500 a month managed service deal, well, the setup fee is $1,500 at the time they sign, which will cover a lot of that. And I also just sell it outright. I sell it $1,500 is the box, and I went back with somebody and looked, and they used to spend, and this is in pretty recent history, within the past 10 years, they were spending close to $700 a year on new tapes. And so, yeah, it's wow. Not a hard sell, even at $1,500, because whether you realize it or not, tapes were inactive so long, they were in the play so long, really, really popular, but people were spending a tremendous amount of money just on tapes. So I haven't had a lot of problems with the hardware, but like I said, if you want to hit me up offline, then I'll be happy to go in depth. I've actually got a vendor who builds them for me, and I get them, like I said, $300, and they have worked well. I'm comfortable. I could virtualize 2 servers on it. It would be slow, but it would keep people operational for 2 days until I got a motherboard in, or until I, got a more powerful machine that I can move the image over to run it off of, if nothing else, that kind of thing.
Cool. Great. Thank you for providing that insight. And then one last question. I know that we're at the top of the hour, so we'll finish it up after this. But a couple of people are asking, when it comes to recovering from the cloud or however you need to recover, do you charge for labor and for the time separately from what you charge monthly for recovery, or do you like bake it all into your monthly fee?
I typically try to bake it all in so it really is an all-inclusive price. It all costs. I try to bake it all in, but even if so the price for 50 servers was $50 the license. At $50 the license, and I'm charging $200 the license a month. I'll throw in if we need to recover, we're going to be there, and we're going to probably help you recover. A lot of times it just dictates by the situation. If they've had a fire or they've had a natural disaster, well, there's going to be a lot of other costs that are involved in that, and I'll probably be able to bake some of the recovery costs into an insurance claim somewhere, you know, that kind of thing. So we do that occasionally, but for the most part, we just do it. We just handle it.
Okay, great. I'll take one more question from Peter, who's asking, you know, what is the average time per month that you would say you take to manage a BDR client?
I can tell you that we manage that I can do that in a factor of 20, meaning that I would say we spend, not counting the time to deploy them, so to get, you know, to actually install Replibit in the shop, get it, that kind of thing. But once they're deployed, we probably spend about 5 hours of management per 20 BDRs per month.
Okay, wow.
And that's looking at the monitoring, that's figuring out why did that one not boot, you know, whatever the case may be. I would say probably about 5 hours a month per 20 BDRs.
Cool, great. So I think we're kind of out of time, but Willie, thank you so much for providing all your valuable insight and all of this information today. I think a lot of people got a lot out of it. So, yeah, I mean, let's just call it a day.
And like I said, you can if you could provide my contact details. I do have to jump off of here, but feel free to anybody hit me up offline. I'll be happy to call you, email, talk, whatever the case may be. And if anybody wants to get into, you know, have a nerd talk about, well, does it do this and what about this, then we can do that as well. So I appreciate everybody's time today, and I appreciate your all's time in putting this together.
Perfect. Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much, Willie. We really do appreciate it.
Okay, talk to you all later.
Yep, talk to you later. And this is Neeraj signing off from San Francisco. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And have a great rest of your week.